Rolling out with the future, electric dreams inside Justise, Ray and Phil light up the mic. From the latest in tech to the roads we pave, debating all things EV, the power we crave. Justise, Ray and Phil in the electric west. Watch, like, and subscribe. Be one of our guests. CarEdge Electric, where passions ignite. The show starts now. Embrace the EV life.
Maybe we got to change that to embrace the hybrid life.
Yes.
I think you do. I would be in support of that.
Yes. Welcome to CarEdge Hybrid.
Yeah. I like that.
It just doesn't have the same ring to it. Hi guys.
How are you today?
Hello. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone. So we are talking all this news about EV adoption and Ray's favorite subject, hybrid versus EV. Ray's been championing hybrids for about 2 years now.
You know
what's
amazing?
Well,
you sent out some articles, and it was like, some of the most astounding things were like, many people see hybrids as a bridge to full battery. Geez, I think I built that damn bridge. I think I was the one that was talking about that bridge while the bridge was under construction.
You have, but I will say this, right? So, I gotta represent the EV people here.
Okay.
I will say one thing, that none of these articles, because I think I sent like 4 about this very subject, right?
Yes.
The EV hype is over and people want hybrids. Nobody talks about the reason a lot of people want hybrids is they're miseducated. There's a lot of misinformation about EVs. They're like, oh, I don't want an EV, it's going to catch fire. You know what's going to catch fire the most?
Would that be a hybrid? Yeah.
By a lot. It's not even close. The least likely to catch fire is an EV. Yes, if it does, good luck.
Yeah, you don't want to be anywhere near it if it does, but yeah.
But when I'm reading through the articles, because I still see this all the time. We get members who come in and like, I don't want an EV. I'm gonna have to replace the tires every 6 months, and you just kind of go, but no, this isn't. We talk about on this show all the time, but obviously not everyone watches our show yet. Everyone who does watch our show needs to go out and tell all their friends to watch the show.
Yes. Yes.
But, there's a lot of misinformation about EVs. There's a lot of scare tactics. There's a lot of, I'd say, BS headlines. I had one that I was going to send you, Ray, that I forgot to send you, a car that caught fire and crashed into a house. And you have to go down to the last paragraph to see that it was a Nissan, right? And you damn well know it would have been in the headline if it was an EV.
Yes.
It would have been in the headline if it was an EV. It wasn't an EV. It was just a traditional ICE car, and it was buried down in that last paragraph. And there's a lot of narrative journalism about EVs out there. But, and it depends where you go. Pro on some places. Like, you're not going to go to Recurrent Auto and have them tell you EVs suck, right? I mean, that's just, that's not going to happen. But, Car and Driver is kind of moving more towards it. But up till maybe 4 months ago, you'd never see a positive article in Car and Driver about EVs, and everyone sort of has their viewpoint and taken. So I'm reading through a lot of these articles from, AAA and Digital Insurance and these, and I'm like, but you're not really digging into it. You're just saying, well, that's what it is. People don't want EVs. And I just got to semi-disagree, not fully. Obviously, adoption is slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a positive number.
A lot.
Well, I mean, inflation went from 12% to 4%. It's still inflation. So
when did it go to 4%?
It's at 4% now.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah. But it's
an election year, Phil. Yesterday.
Hey,
Yeah, it was in the news. It was in the news this morning that it got reported. But yeah, I mean, but it doesn't mean that inflation has gone away. EV adoption is slowed, but it's still adopting. It's still a positive number.
I concur. You know, it is. I think I said this the same time I was talking about building bridges. Early adopters adopted.
Yeah.
Potential adopters are somewhat wary. There's not enough information out there. And so to a certain degree, the move towards full battery electric vehicles has slowed. Hasn't stopped.
No.
Slowed. It's not.
Yeah. And it's not plateaued.
Yes. It's just not moving at the same speed it had been. That doesn't mean it won't pick up speed again.
Well, let me say this too. When we say this and all of these articles are talking about this, we're talking new.
Yes.
Used EV adoption is skyrocketing.
Yes, because they're so damn cheap.
Yeah, because they're so cheap. Because of the devaluation and everything else, which, you know, if you bought high, you probably think is one of the worst things in the world. But if you're looking to buy used, yeah, this could be a great. And so used EV adoption is skyrocketing right now.
Yes.
Because you can get them way cheaper than hybrids. Certainly than hybrids. Actually, hybrids are one of the most expensive options, even in the used market right now.
I'm going to go close my sliding door. I can't stand the blinds blowing around. I'll be right.
Right, but you know, when we're talking used prices, EV hybrids are the highest, right? They hold their value the most, and you can't negotiate. Phil, you and I know this. We do this all day. Then it's ICE, and then it's EV. You know, EVs quote unquote lose their value. So they're just cheap, and you can get them. You can get my car that I bought. You can buy that now for like $20,000. So you can buy a 4-year-old really nice EV for $20,000 and less. Like, you know, there's something.
I saw a Bolt. We have a customer in concierge, right? And they are looking to get out of a 23 Bolt that it's like 750 miles you put on it, something like that, whatever. He doesn't want it anymore, right? He owes like 37. It's a $20,000 trade.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, if I had financed my car, I'd be underwater too. I mean, I did finance it at first, but if I not paid it off, I'd be underwater right now. And that would piss me off. Maybe. I plan on keeping my car, so it might be irrelevant. But I get that situation of, you know, a lot of the, let's not call them the early adopters, a lot of the mid adopters overpaid for their vehicles. The early adopters knew they were overpaying, and that was that. And a lot of them paid cash and like whatever. You know, then that was when EVs were $100,000. But also, I think when we talk about miseducation, we talk a lot about people think that they still are $60,000, $70,000, $100,000. And some of them certainly are. You know, if you want to get into a Lucid, good luck. But, you know, a lot of these, you know, Teslas and Hyundais and Kias, you can get at very reasonable prices. So, you know, there's some misconception on how expensive they are as well. And that sort of all plays into this.
Do you think that might have something to do with the fact that every time a major manufacturer announces a new EV coming out, the damn thing starts at $72,000? So do you think that might be the reason why the perception out there is that EVs are way too expensive?
I think it is that it might come out to $72,000, but I think the real one is that when they announce it, they say it's going to be $30,000.
Well,
then when they release it, it's 72, and everyone goes, "Oh well, so your prices aren't real. It's all going to be this jacked up price." You know, Cybertruck, same thing. You know, I had my Cybertruck reservation a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, "Yeah, when I reserved this was going to be a $40,000 truck," and and now it's $100,000 truck. Like, do you see why I won't go through with my reservation here? And there's a lot of that. Tesla's by far not the only one that did that. Ford did that, GM's done that, a lot of, and I get it's really the Tesla model, right? You come out with the super expensive one first to fund it, and then over time it comes down. But Tesla did that 20 years ago and then has brought things down since. And now we're in the day of the EV, and you really can't do that anymore. You need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to release an affordable car, I think.
Fiat did. How's that selling? Because the one thing I do know is if I wanted to be like Spike Lee or Giancarlo Esposito, I would go get me one of those Fiat EVs. But I don't see myself as either one of those. But that's supposed to be an inexpensive EV. Does it sell?
Well, do they sell?
I don't think
cars. Do they sell a lot of the gas versions of their cars?
Not in this country.
Yeah. Well, that is something I definitely want to hit on in a little bit, which is country by country. How does this all look? Because much like AI adoption and a lot of the technology, the U.S. keeps coming in last place in the world.
Why is that?
People are outpacing us. We don't like change. I think that's part of it. We have a fundamental distrust for new things. We see technology as mainly spyware, is my guess. That might be some personal opinions pushed into that theory, but
let's say yes.
But I think we're very skeptical of that. Unless your name is Google, then somehow we'll just give you all of our information, no problem. But otherwise, I think people are very skeptical of it. And in other countries where they maybe trust the government and companies more, that the more when I look at the list of countries, I'll just bring up the list of countries we talked. When I look at this list of country adoptions, I also see a correlation in how much do you trust your government? And it kind of goes into the same, Norway, Iceland, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Netherlands. They all very much trust their government, and they're all very happy where they live and happy with the way things go. In the U.S., we don't tend to trust our government depending on who's in office, right? And we're very fight it. And I think that kind of goes down in the line. We got China up here, and the U.S. is way down here. Right? There's very few people lower than the U.S. on EV adoption. And I do think there's a trust and opinion part of this that plays into this. Now, I haven't done a lot of research to connect, but I can almost guarantee you that these countries up here are ones that trust their government more.
I don't know that it's so much trust their government as
I don't think so either.
They're small countries that have been around for thousands of years, that have limited space, that are accepting of small vehicles. I mean, there is a reason like why Mini is popular in Europe and not nearly as popular in the United States. So there would be
small roads has something to do with that too.
Yes, and there would be a correlation for small EV vehicle adoptions in those European countries that have a limited amount of space for roads and everything else. I mean,
I agree. It's limited population. They drive less than the U.S. They drive less distances than the U.S. I think we all have talked about this before. What's interesting about the highest adoption countries is they're all cold weather countries.
Yeah,
where your battery would be most limited somehow, and they're still in there. But yeah, to your point, like Norway, Iceland, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Netherlands, Ireland, Belgium, Portugal, Sweden, or Switzerland. How many states' room would that take up? That would take up what, the Northeast?
Yeah, probably.
Right. I mean, and it's so, you know, I kind of look at that and go, well, California is bigger than Norway. What is our adoption rate? I mean, it's not theirs. It's not 79.6%.
Yeah.
Any means. But, you know, for the U.S. with our size, and we all know, you know, if you travel around the U.S., attitudes are different from state to state to state to state.
Yes.
And we pride ourselves on that here, actually. So I also kind of look at the countries and go, really, you should compare it with state to state. You know, California has got a very high adoption rate, but, you know, Michigan does not.
Correct.
How about Montana?
Montana has 7 people in it. So I think if 2 of them bought an EV, that would be a huge
one
adoption.
Since I last checked.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yes.
I don't know if I just, my opinion hasn't really changed in the sense that I think for EV adoption to really can continue on a much quicker trajectory, infrastructure has to come first.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Bless you.
That was a big one.
Yeah,
All right.
well, you know, normally when I think I'm going to sneeze on the show, it doesn't happen. This time it did. Jeez.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, infrastructure, like we've talked about a couple times on the show, California is now at 1 EV charging station for every 5 gas stations. So of course we have a higher adoption rate, plus weather, and we don't have, you know,
that's where all the adoption numbers are coming from anyway. It's all from California.
It definitely skews
It's
the
so
rest of the
skewed.
numbers.
It's so skewed.
Yeah, I mean, it does. But I mean, I know, Phil, you don't like to hear this, but we here in California are still part of the United States. So we do get counted.
Don't know that.
I know.
You know,
I know you don't like this.
Sometimes look at it like that's just a different country. They're over there doing their own thing. You know, living their own life. I don't know.
But yeah, you know, to Mark's point, China is still enormous adoption rate. They're still increasing a lot, and part of this is that they're having a price war with Tesla, and they just keep cutting down the prices on the EVs, and so people are just running out and buying them.
Is that because of government support in China?
I think, look, like I said, I have not done research. It is my opinion.
Yes.
That when you look at this adoption rate, there is a lot of support for the government. The government's push EVs and say this is what you should be in. And these countries, as opposed to the US, definitely have a better outlook on their government and their government's opinion and welfare for them.
Could it be, for instance, in China, that the Chinese government sees a path for a more global automotive industry within China if they move towards EVs, because they realize when it comes to ICE vehicles, they would never really be able to compete in the same manner on a global stage.
So they 100% are targeting Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, with their car sales. Oh, everyone's like, oh, China wants to get into the US. I mean, they'd like to, but we're really not a super priority to them. I can tell you that. Because, you know, the Biden administration just put the new tariffs on them. I think it's 100%.
Yeah.
Right, on the EVs, just to keep them out. But I don't think China is necessarily clamoring. I mean, yes, they would like a market. It's a nice size market. But if they never come to the U.S., like Renault or something, it's not like Renault's doing poorly, right? They do great. So China EVs, why wouldn't they go to the countries that have the highest adoption rate. Why bother with America right now when they're all there?
You know, Renault was in the United States at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't they kind of like minis though? Aren't they like the smaller European cars?
Some of their models, you know, they did. I guess it was in the late 70s, early 80s. They offered the car, which was a small vehicle. But Renault was never known for. Well, hell, the French were never known to produce a quality automobile.
So I have friends in France that I talk to pretty much on a daily basis, and just their car culture is different there.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen videos, and when they like parallel park, you back up until you hit the car behind you, and then you go forward until you hit the car in front of you, and then you back up till you hit the car behind you. And I have told my friends, I'm like, don't drive in the U.S. You don't want to do that.
No, come on. No. You go to Washington, D.C., you go to Philadelphia, you go to New York City, you go to any major East Coast city, and that's how people park. Oh. You know, I can tell you.
Don't do that in California, then.
Oh my God! Well, I can tell you from having appraised cars all my life, especially it was easy to tell when it was a city car, because they had scratches and dents and license plate indentures and license plate frame screw indentures in the front and rear bumpers from every bumper they hit, every license plate, because that's how you park the car.
See,
I would not be able to handle that.
Yeah, I hadn't been driving yet when I left Boston, but so I've only driven, most of my life in California.
Well,
you would never do that here.
On the East Coast, it's like you're not allowed to park your car if you don't touch the other person's bumper. Okay,
that's got to be the same reason, though, right? Ray, there's no space.
Yes, and I can tell you that I have never appraised a city car where I didn't have to factor in the cost of repainting both the front and rear bumpers. It was just part and parcel of every city car appraisal, because they were all scratched and chipped and dented to hell. It's just the way it is. If you want to, I mean, we used to put up bulletin boards, not bulletin, but the display boards in Baltimore that said if you were driving a Mini, you would have been able to have parked already. Okay, you wouldn't still be driving around looking for a parking space. We had billboards for that because it was everybody's trying to park a full size car in the city. You can't do it without hitting the other cars.
It's true.
Yeah, Yep.
All
right. So maybe they can go over there. That's but I mean, it's a different car culture for sure.
Yes.
Than it's, and in all these countries, it's everyone has a different car culture. We say in the U.S., and I've said it on this episode here, is our geography and how big we are, but China's adoption is huge, and they're bigger than us geographically and population.
Well, China also built ghost cities with the.
No, they did.
With high-rise apartment buildings that nobody's ever lived in.
They did, including one that mirrors Paris, and it's beautiful.
So,
but they've also put money into infrastructure.
Yes,
they're putting a lot of money into the EV infrastructure over there. And yes, right now, someone said, they're burning a lot of coal to do that. They are, but also they're leading the world in clean energy, green adoption as well. So they're using coal, but they're moving and transitioning by leaps and bounds into green energy. I think China sees this green movement as their chance to get the green movement and AI. Those are the two things that China is like laser focused on right now, and trying to, capture that and get there. So,
no, but does anyone believe what China says? Nope.
but we don't necessarily have to believe what they say, as we can see what the numbers really are. Tesla themselves are there and sees what's going on and other things. I'm not taking the word of their government because, as we've discussed, I don't trust any world government. And I just wanted to respond to Brad here. You sure would miss our money, being the fifth largest economy in the world. I think you'd miss us.
Yeah.
Nah.
And I really don't like having to defend California all the time. But I will. Because we're not all bad.
I'm guessing, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that the citizenry of California sends more money to the IRS in the form of income taxes than the state of California gets back from the federal government.
Oh, yeah. So California's GDP last year was $3.9 trillion.
Wow.
And the current Congress only spent 100% of that on their budget. So, you're welcome.
I was going to say, I would suggest for anyone in the United States that says, "Oh, well, let California become its own country," well, then your income taxes are going to go up because to make up for that shortfall, because California is a state that produces more income tax than they get in government support, and federal government support. So it's one of those states that helps all the other states. California.
Yeah, California, Texas, Florida, New York, fund many other states.
Yes.
And their ability. And I'm not going to say the politicians are happy to do it, but I think as at a balance, everyone's kind of happy to do that. Otherwise we couldn't have states that don't have an income tax, for example, or states that have no sales tax. There's government. Everyone says, well, they funded other ways. Well, a lot of those ways are federal dollars brought back into the state.
Yes.
From the other states that pay.
Yeah.
Again, not to get on to that tangent, but I do have to. I'm not the most supportive Californian in the world, but there are things where I'm like, look, don't give us the worst ratings that we don't deserve. If you want to attack our politicians, I'll just sit back and listen, because I get hoarse doing it myself. So you want to pile on to Newsom, go for it. No problem. He's going to be your next president anyway.
Oh my God!
Don't you say anything such as that. You shush your mouth, Justice.
What else is on the agenda for today?
So, well, we kind of went over the countries thing. For me, a lot of this was, when I was reading through these articles, was really just trying to put some context to it. I think there is a momentum to
can you
to obfuscate real EV numbers.
Can you pull up the AAA article, because their numbers in their survey certainly paint a completely different picture than what other surveyors have come back with when it comes towards potential EV adoption in this country. And the thing that I found interesting was those that were likely or very likely has gone down year over year when it comes to the AAA survey, and the unlikely and very unlikely to consider an electric vehicle has actually skyrocketed over the last 2 years. And every other survey I've seen seems to indicate something different.
Yeah, so I know, I think we had this graph the last episode, and I didn't pull it up because we ran out of time. But I think what we're seeing is a lot of projections are the opposite of this, right?
Yeah.
People are saying that they're more likely in the future to do it. And I saw this graph too, and I had questions. But this, to me, this graph sort of proves my theory and point of, I think the unlikely to very unlikely crowd in this survey may be growing because of misinformation and the perception that they're feeling forced to do, that they're feeling, government mandates, whether they're actual or perceived, doesn't matter. Government mandates push people back in the US and they go, no, I'm not going to do that. You can't tell me what to do. I didn't pull up the article. I did see an article that Virginia opted out of the CARB standards. So
Gotcha.
Virginia has said, no, we're not following California, which I think is part of that perception of mandates. California kind of is.
If I were a vehicle manufacturer, I don't know whether I would look at the AAA survey and go, it's an outlier. Or if I would look at that and I'd go, oh my God, I just pooped myself. Because that indicates something completely different from everything else we've seen. And if that happens to be accurate, that's bad news for the EV industry in the near term.
It is.
I mean, when you look at that.
No, it is. And I have a question about that too. And I think this goes into a larger thing I think we've talked about before, which is, the great divide in America that everyone knows, the intellectual, or not intellectual, the ideological divide in the US. And where now with all this, myself included, you can go anywhere and find something that's going to reinforce your point of view. Yeah. As you said, most of the surveys are saying something different.
Yes.
But if you sort of have a personal ideological bent that EVs suck and you don't want them, you can go to this survey and it's going to confirm your opinion. So this is the one that you're going to use. Well, other people might use the recurrent survey, but recurrent survey interviews EV owners. So
I would just be curious, is there some implicit,
and I was going to mention this too.
Okay. Is there some implicit
but who are
bias?
They polling AAA members? Sorry, Ray.
Well, I don't know if they're just polling AAA members or not. I would assume that's part of it.
It's going to be part of it. Yes.
Yeah. But is there an implicit bias from all the others that might lean towards hoping for or pushing for greater EV adoption?
I think it depends where you go, but I think there are segments on both sides of this that absolutely look. Just talk to two of the main news sites. If you go to CNN and ask them about EVs, they're going to tell you one thing. If you go to Fox and ask them about EVs, they're going to disagree with every single thing that CNN just told you, right? And so it is very hard to figure out in all of these where any of this lies. I bemoan this, I think, every single episode, that I hate that EVs are 50% political opinion and 50% actual about the vehicle and the technology. It's just unfortunate for EV adoption, which I like. Obviously, I like the tech, I like the EVs, but yeah, I do think you're right, Ray. There are definitely avenues here that are, they have their point of view and they have whatever agenda, whether conscious or subconscious, of that they're going to do.
I mean, I call me silly, but I would almost think of AAA as being less politicized when it comes to doing a survey than than many of the mainstream media outlets. That
I would, definitely more than the cable news outlets.
Yeah,
I just use those as an example.
Yeah, but-
Certainly,
but-
I don't want to put AAA into that category, but
no. But so that's what I think makes my point. That if I was a manufacturer, if I was GM, if I was Ford, pick any of them. And I keep betting dollars to donuts that EV adoption is going to continue at a unreasonably high pace. If I were to see that survey from AAA, that would stop me in my tracks. Because you have to try and figure out which ones are offering the most legitimate information. And I would I'm betting that, and maybe I'm naive, I don't know, but I'm betting that it would be the one from AAA and not the one from someone else.
I don't know who they interviewed, but I do agree that I was going to say this too, was AAA's members skew older. Not a lot of Gen Zs out there going for AAA because they're too expensive.
Yeah.
Just for lack of anything else, they're just too expensive. And so I do question too, who did they talk to? Who did they survey in that? And I don't know. And so it's hard to evaluate the legitimacy without knowing who they surveyed and what the questions were, right? We all know how surveys work, and the leading questions up to your main question can really change the answers a lot.
And how you survey, because if you're surveying by phone, and you're calling landlines, well, that's I would think that would tend to much older people.
You're going to skew much older. Yeah.
Yes,
whereas if you only do a type form, you're probably going to skew much younger.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. So I just
possibly.
Yeah, I just saw those numbers.
Yeah.
And that's I know it stopped me in my tracks.
I feel like most surveys now are going to go through text. They're going to go through cell phones. They're going to be email.
Yeah.
That's where most of the surveys are actually probably going to.
I would hope so. Which would count out most of the Supreme Court if they went to email. As most of the members of the Supreme Court still don't have emails. Only 2 have emails. So that's funny. That's funny.
Wow.
And so Brad has a comment that I hear a lot. If you have to subsidize it, people don't really want it. I always, yes and no. I'm going to tell you, you don't understand how much the government subsidizes the auto industry. Because ICE vehicles have been subsidized since they existed. There's a lot of subsidies, and those get passed through up at the top instead of on the other side. But the subsidies here are meant to increase adoption due to climate change by the people who created that. So if you don't believe in that man contributed to that, obviously you would see that as illegitimate. If you believe that man contributes to climate change, then you would see this as legitimate. The people who put this law in do believe that, so that's why that's there, to help increase this. As Elon Musk has said many times, they didn't need the subsidies to start selling their vehicles. So there is a certain segment that it would still keep growing. But I mean, it's a legitimate complaint, one way or the other. 100% people don't always understand how much the government subsidizes the auto manufacturers and how much goes to oil. Oil outpaces EV subsidies by 10 times, way more than that, actually. But, and that just is what it is on that part of it. I also want to bring up a couple of comments from Igor here, our lovely friend Igor, who needs to come on the show at some point. Most Americans bash other countries when they've never been outside the U.S. This is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you encounter someone who's traveled outside the U.S. for the very first time, no matter where they go, they come back the first time, and it's like, that is better than the U.S. And they could go to Afghanistan. They'll come back. And that is better than the U.S. That is the most wonderful place I've ever been. The first time you go outside the country is always like, there's culture shock, and you're there as a tourist, not somebody living and blah, 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 all of that. And it gets into that. I see that all the time. And then Igor says he's been to China multiple times. And if most Americans travel to China, they may not want to come back. I've been to China once. It was amazing. The people were so wonderful, so nice, so accommodating. I was in the cities. I was in 2 cities, not out in the rural area. But to me, they were all very, very nice people. I think a lot of us sort of talk about the Chinese government and not the Chinese people. Just like I think a lot of foreign people complain about America. They mean our government and not the people, which are different stories. But I do agree. I very much enjoyed China when I went. It was they were lovely
I've never
people.
been there.
They were
Someday, hopefully.
I had a good time, and I suggest I have friends who went to the Paris replica, which is why I mentioned it earlier, in China, which looks like a ghost town by day and is packed at night. Like everybody comes out at night, and there's just tons and tons and tons of people who actually really do live there. But they said it was beautiful. 2 of my friends actually live in Paris who went there, and they said it was very weird because it was very accurate, but all the signs were in Chinese and not French. And they said, "Oh, that's not the shop that's there," and that was but it was very lovely. So,
Well, I can honestly say I've never been there.
no,
Yeah. So, and at my age, and hating to be in an airplane for more than 4 or 5 hours at any given time, the likelihood of me ever going to China or just about anywhere on this planet is pretty remote at this point in time. Because I'm not sitting in a plane that long.
oh, right. That is always the worst part. That's why I haven't visited all my friends in Europe. It's like, wow, that's such a long plane ride. My best friend just moved back from Australia, and they literally did a 2-day stop in Hawaii because they didn't want to make the whole trip all the way again.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, we're going to stop halfway, which is Hawaii, and it's like, okay, we're going to rest, and then we're going to come back because it was like, it's another 8-9 hours to get to California from there, and I just couldn't. Like I'm with you, Ray. I can't do a 16-hour flight.
I know my son,
That is
God
tough.
bless him, Zach, God bless him, has this idea that someday he would like to take the whole family. We should go on a trip to New Zealand and Australia.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I said, man, that sounds really great, except for the plane ride to get me there.
Yep, I've talked about it with my friends, and we just said, so let's do a cruise to Australia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And then because they have one-way cruises, I'm like, we'll cruise there, we'll get off, we'll do a couple weeks there, and we'll cruise back because yes, it takes 10 times longer. It takes many, many days to get there, but I can stretch and I can go do stuff and I can be comfortable. I can lay down in the bed. If I do 14 hours on a plane, it's got to be like United Arab Emirates or something.
I can't imagine doing that time frame on a plane. I can't. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I struggle with, what, 4 hours to go to California of all places. Let's just say, it's a long time on a plane.
It is. I've been toying with the idea of I should winter somewhere warmer, and today's version of that is Las Vegas, not California, and because I could handle a 5-hour flight to Las Vegas. But
then, only 45 minutes more to California. Though, right?
And then it's only 4.5 hours to fly back, assuming that you know, the world hasn't gone to hell in a handbasket. We still have tailwinds. But you know, just the thought of being in a plane that long takes some of the fun out of it. For me, anyway.
I agree. I do agree. I mean, again, I've not been on Korean Air or United Arab Emirates, but I have seen their planes. And I've
Yes.
seen lots of videos of their planes, and I think that could take some of the sting out of it. But
like
American planes, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. But yeah, like
What
the
is it?
suites, Phil.
Emirates, their A380 and their apartments that they have on the second level. I could do that.
Yeah, you can be
I'd even
comfortable in that,
wager
right?
that probably Igor here has probably had an opportunity to
Igor, have you?
partake in that type of luxury.
Or just Igor just take a private plane. He just takes
Or
his own
he just
plane.
takes his own plane. Yeah,
Which
you're
would
right.
also be better, right? You can get up and stretch around.
Correct.
That. And we do have this comment. I'm a fan of architecture, and I have been to Japan 4 times. And if I was going to leave the country, that would be the very top of my list. Japan was the cleanest country I've ever been to in my life, and
Wow.
that includes Canada. It was so clean. It was so quiet. People were so nice. Although I understand trying to rent an apartment as an American is very different. But as vacationing there was almost no country ever I've loved more than Japan, other than, you know, the tropical ones for different reasons. But culturally, Japan, and architecturally, you know, when you go down to Tokyo and they have these giant, beautiful high rises that are literally next door to these 1,000-year-old temples. It's amazing. It's weird to see, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful. It's a great country. Actually, I've never been to a country I didn't like. I'll be honest with you. I just have not been to it. Nor have I been to a state I did not like. I have admitted to Phil many times, if you'd asked me if I wanted to go to Detroit, I'd say, hell no, I don't want to go to Detroit. And then we went to Detroit, and it was wonderful. I had an amazing time. I loved Detroit, and now all of my friends and I have.
It's really much better. It really truly is.
All of my friends and I now have plans to go back. Where I told everyone, okay, let's go to the Ford Museum. I know the hot dog place to go. I know the Italian restaurant to go. Let's go. Like, we're gonna go. We're gonna go do this. We'll explore some new stuff. Like, let's go back to Detroit. And everyone kind of looks at me weird at first, like, Detroit? I'm like, no, I get it. But trust me, it's not.
No, Detroit was lovely. It really was when we were there. I was surprised.
Yeah, I think RoboCop, right? That's what we think of old Detroit, right?
I mean, you think of it like that.
Well, you live there, so it's different. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Detroit's better than what it used to be 20 years ago. That is 1,000% correct.
Well, I think most major cities are.
I can name one that isn't. It's very close to me.
San Francisco.
I hope they get back to where they were 20 years ago.
Well, you know,
it used to be a very lovely city.
Yeah, my son was talking to me the other day about. He really enjoyed his time out in San Francisco when he was there for that conference. And he was, maybe I should live there. I said, maybe you should wait. I said, because if you wait long enough, you can probably buy the whole damn city for a ham sandwich. So
there's I wouldn't live there. I have lived in San Francisco, and I did not enjoy my time. It was not 20 years ago. It was less than that. I did not enjoy my time, and it's gone down tremendously since there. But when I was in film school, I was there. And I ended up, after the first semester, I ended up moving back to Sacramento and just commuted to school, which is a 2-hour drive every day each way. And that was better for me than living in the city. But it used to be a great city, and I hope it is. But
that's right, David.
What was that?
David posted Faygo, Verner's, ginger ale, Saunders chocolate, Heck yeah.
I don't know what any of that means.
What? Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
Do you know what time it is?
It's time for you to tell us what you're going to eat and show us your watch so we can go on with our day.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to eat is baked ham and Swiss cheese from Florida Cold Cuts here in Ventnor City, New Jersey. They have absolutely the best baked ham. They make their own. If you like your baked ham to have a little bit of a clove flavor to it, you'll love the baked ham at Florida Cold Cuts. And the watch is a Maurice Lacroix. This is the watch I got when the family was in Puerto Rico. It's one of 500. It's bronze and stainless in the back. It is an automatic movement.
Very cool.
And
I like the color.
Yeah, and the color. I mean, the bronze gets a patina to it. So it used to be brighter than this. And this, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, this watch came out of the 50% off rack at the at the jewelry store because it had been sitting there for a while, and I liked it. I don't have any bronze watches in my collection, or I didn't until that day, and it was worth taking the shot at 50% off. So
awesome.
There you have it. Yeah.
Nice purchase. Nice job.
Ray, can I ask you a stupid question?
Sure.
Because I'm not a watch collector.
Yeah.
So forgive me if this sounds super naive and stupid. It probably is. What the hell does automatic movement mean?
Automatic movement has it's self-winding. Okay. And so there's a piece inside that rocks back and forth as your wrist moves. And as that rocks back and forth, it actually winds the spring. Okay. And automatic movements can have a power reserve, some of them up to 80 hours. From when you wear it, it'll keep running for up to 80 hours. I think this one's 40 hours. But that's what an automatic movement is. It's not a mechanical movement where you have to wind it yourself every day. It is an automatic movement that winds itself with the movement of your hand and wrist.
I get it. So you actually answered another question I've always had about when I watch, I'm going to use a super old reference, but you guys are going to know what I mean. When I watch things like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous,
yes,
where they go into the closets and they have the watches and they're all spinning on these things. And I'm like, why do you need your watches spinning in your closet? And now I think you have just answered why that happened.
Yes, because they were an automatic watch and that's how you keep it wound.
So I did not, forgive me for my ignorance. I'm not a watch guy. I have an Apple Watch. And that I wear 3 days a year.
Okay.
And I just don't. I never have watches. I don't wear jewelry. I don't wear watches. I don't wear that stuff. So I never got into it. So I've never known what that term meant. So thank you for explaining that. I, by the way, thought all watches were self-winding. So
no,
I didn't.
So now you know. And then you can get like a quartz movement, which is battery operated. And quartz movements became extremely inexpensive at one time with the advent of the development of the quartz movement, particularly in Japan. So you'll see a lot of watches today that have Japan movements, either as an automatic Japan movement or as a quartz Japan movement. Still the finest watches in the world are considered to be with Swiss movements.
I was going to say the Swiss watches are still.
Yes, this is a Swiss.
I knew that much. Yeah. Give me credit for that. I knew that much.
Okay. Yes, this is a Swiss watch. Yeah.
All right.
CarEdge watch show.
Yeah, I think Igor suggests the same thing. He'll go on, and you guys could do 2 years of shows just on the watches you two own.
Igor has probably a much deeper watch collection as far as the quality of the watches. I have like 35 or 36 watches now. The quality of my watches are low end in comparison to what a lot of watch collectors have. This is perhaps the MSRP on this watch was probably the most expensive watch MSRP wise that I have ever purchased. But then again, I did purchase it for 50% off, so it wasn't quite as bad.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have a thing for watches. I admit it. I even had to add another watch case because I kept buying more and more.
That's okay. I mean, yeah, hobbies are okay. I have lots of things that people think are stupid to collect. And not that watches are stupid to collect, but, collections, we all have something.
My hope is that when I pass, that my children get a kick out of the collection and they figure out whatever they can to do with it. I don't see it going up in value, but they could give them away to friends.
I collect coffee mugs.
That's a very popular collection.
Yeah.
I get that.
I
probably have a cabinet full of the Starbucks ones of different states.
The state collections. Those are big.
Mm-hmm.
I collect
a few of those.
authentic tiki mugs, which I'm sure doesn't surprise you, Phil. But
nope.
But I collect authentic old world traditional tiki mugs, which are hard to find. But everybody has their collections, I guess.
Yes.
My mugs cost much less than Ray's watch. I think. My entire collection costs less than one of Ray's watches.
I don't know. I have some pretty cheap watches.
I just meant your most expensive.
Okay. I was going to say there is a Seiko automatic watch that I do wear occasionally that literally, when I got it, I bought it on sale from Amazon. It was $76. So I do have some pretty inexpensive watches in my watch collection.
There you go, David. David collects EVs. Yeah. There you go.
I collect EVs.
I wish I could collect EVs.
Here, I don't want to ruin David's day, but I will say this: his EV, the value of his EV collection is dropping faster than the value of my watch collection.
That's true.
Sorry,
oh boy,
David.
Ray said it.
I apologize, David.
So on our way out, I just wanted to say this on the watch subject. Day before yesterday, I went to In-N-Out, as you know, I do every week.
Yeah.
And the guy at the drive-thru at the pay window was handing me my change. He had a Casio calculator watch on.
Wow.
I used to have that watch in 1988. I know that watch. I was like, what do you do with the calculator watch now? You have a phone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I just saw that. I was just like, man, I have not seen that in forever. It was nostalgic. It had the little orange around the calculator on it. I'm like, I know that watch. It was great. The same one I had in 88.
Very cool.
The watch that I wanted when I was a kid was tied to Kit.
Yep.
There you go.
Look, hey, Phil, I have the Tesla app on my phone. And I can do many of the Kit functions, including summoning my car from its parking spot to me. Not yet, but my buddy's Ioniq 5 says a lot to him. Like it talks a lot outside the car too. Your car is about to charge. Your car is unlocked. And I asked him, I said, can you turn that off? Because I don't like that at all. And you can, but he really liked it. And I was very surprised at how much that car talks to you. It was like, okay, that's weird. I didn't know that.
Wow.
All right. Well, we will be back next week. We have a very special guest next week that was going to join this week, but he had to bump it because he has a very big, exciting news that he can't tell me what it is, but the deal is closing today. And so he'll be on to announce that next week. And we'll talk all things about his product, which is either really cool or really silly, depending on your point of view. But I think it's going to end up for a lot of people when we're talking about EV adoption. I think for a lot of people, it's going to end up really cool for them. Not me, but I think there is something to be said for the market that he's doing. I know there is something to be said because he's building an entire company doing it, and he's selling these products really, really well. So we'll be back next week to talk about that. I think it's going to be very.
That's going to be a
fun.
good one.
That's going to be a fun discussion.
I am looking forward to this one.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good seeing you, Phil. Good seeing you, Justice.
Yeah. See you guys.